Thank you for joining us. Welcome to our free public series to help you boost your news IQ. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into different information zones and help you discern whether what you see is news, opinion, or advertising. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes, nothing too major. My colleague, Ali, will be in the chat helping out with questions or dropping resources. And this webinar is being recorded and will be available later when we send a follow-up email later in the week. And let's begin. So my name is Mario Phibbs-Smith. I'm the Senior Manager of Communications at the News Literacy Project. I'm a journalist and a former marketing and communications professional. I've worked in traditional newsrooms like the Chicago Sun-Times, as well as digital startups. If for some reason I'm unable to get to a question that you might have today, feel free to send me an email at my email at dphibsmith@newslit.org. Thank you. So before we get into this dive into the information landscape, I think it's important to revisit some news literacy elements and for people who might be unfamiliar or if this is their first time attending one of these series. News literacy is a fundamental skill in today's information landscape. It's about your ability to evaluate the credibility of information and recognize the standards of fact-based journalism. At its core, news literacy teaches you how to think critically about the information that you encounter. It doesn't tell you what to think about a specific source. It's up to you to figure that out. It's about equipping you with the tools to make you well-informed and to make conscientious decisions about your life. One important aspect about news literacy is to cultivate a healthy skepticism about news. We want to take people away from being critical of every source of information to having a healthy skepticism about the things that they see. So at NLP, we like to think about the information landscape in information zones. The first being news. And its purpose is to inform you, right? To give you the 5 W's of a thing, the who, what, when, where, how of an issue. It provides the public with information about major events, about people of note, politicians, and celebrities. But there's other types of information as well, like opinion, right? Opinion and commentary are used to help give context to the news that we encounter, the things that are happening around us. There's also entertainment. And these programs are things like TV shows, movies, books. These are things that's not trying to inform you, but trying to entertain you. As well as advertising, right? Which can be entertaining at times, but its purpose is to sell, to market something. Its purpose is to get you to buy something, right? Or to do something. And then another source of information that's pretty important, we won't get into as much in this presentation, is raw information, which are the undoctored versions of, things that would be considered like evidence, the things that you would see in a newspaper article to give the article more credibility, right? The original dash cam footage or the original police body cam footage or the original ring door cam footage, right? These are all things that are raw information that without context could complicate conversations, right? And that's where news comes into place to give context to the raw information we see. And then lastly, a big thing to discuss that we'll discuss today is propaganda and misinformation, where its purpose is to provoke you, right? To manipulate your emotions to, get you to act. So it's important when we're talking about the information landscape that we really understand the terms and the vocabulary used. News is information that informs you through fair and impartial reporting about local and international events, people of note, celebrities, and politicians. And we can look for credibility in news by evaluating them using the seven standards of quality journalism. These are things like, does it cite multiple credible sources? Is it avoiding bias as much as possible? Documentation, right? When we talk about raw footage, this is where documentation comes into play. Are they citing, the original document? Are they citing the source video that this originally came from? Have they done the investigative research to find out where the original documents come from or who posted this? Fairness, having balance, right? And being able to tell sometimes there's more than two sides to a story. Maybe there's three sides, and this is why you'll see lengthy investigations at journalism organizations, because sometimes there's multiple ways and multiple angles and different ways to get in and out of a story. And then also another important one is context. Is this being presented in the right light at the right time, right? Are they giving you the right context about how this issue played out? Is this being presented in the right light? So we can see signs of quality journalism. If we're looking for credibility, we can see these signs in practice through a variety of different steps that credible journalists and journalism organizations take. For instance, the image on the right is a picture of the New York Times Handbook of Values and Practices. And in this document that's open for anyone to go check out, you can find out everything about how their policies towards things like personal relationship with sources, all the way to how they deal with competition and how they allow their journalists to accept gifts. You can also find things like this on an About Us page or on other ethical or editorial policy pages, right? You can also look for signs of quality journalism through other signs of transparency. Things like who reported this piece and when was it reported? How was the interview conducted? Was it done via phone or in person? And then how can we verify where this information is coming from? If it's a digital article, right, there should be hyperlinks to videos or to documents, court filings about this. So it's important, and as we look through all of the skills that we have to have in order to understand these things, in today's digital age, we're just bombarded with a deluge of information. And it can make it really hard to tell fact from fiction. But this issue is much more than just a small inconvenience. It has a profound implication on our daily lives. Misinformation can influence almost every aspect of our daily lives, from our health decisions to financial goals to the policies that we use to govern ourselves. And false information, the spread of it, isn't just a victimless thing. It can erode our trust in public institutions that help us and help give us resources. Misinformation has run rampant. Almost 63% of people worldwide believe that the average person can't distinguish good journalism from rumors and blogs and other falsehoods. It's this lack of trusted information that is a major concern for us as we grow into a more connected world. This is why understanding journalism standards is so important. So when we think about all the information that we encounter, it's important to really have an understanding of what it is and how it, forms in practice. If we look at this article from the New York Times, here's what you should expect from a news article, from a typical news article. The first thing is they'll have a headline, and this will contain mostly nouns and verbs, and some usually is shorter than 10 to 12 words. It's giving you a little bite of what the story is about. Next is the dateline. This tells you when and where a journalist is located at the time of the reporting. And the byline tells you who actually wrote the article. The lead of the story typically happens in the beginning of the article. In this example, there's something that we call in journalism a delayed lead. So it's actually in the second paragraph, but typically it's in the first paragraph or sometimes in the subheading. In the body of the article, you'll see a lot of evidence that is included from credible news sources, from sources that are experts or people who have witnessed something happen. And also in straight news reports, you'll see reports that are written in the third person with more of an active voice, and they use neutral phrasing, right? And avoid suggestive, sensational language. So it's crucial that we understand that producing ethical quality journalism is very nuanced. It involves a lot of different decisions that seem straightforward to us, but newsroom leaders have to juggle these decisions every day. So newsrooms, like everywhere else, only have so much time and resources to make sure that things get covered. They have to make choices every day about what stories to prioritize and what resources to allocate to them. Journalists also have to grapple with the challenge of determining which stories are legitimate to avoid amplifying rage or misleading information. And as we look at examples throughout the remainder of the presentation, I want you to remember that it's natural to feel a personal connection to these specific issues, right? It's natural to feel some type of way to things, but in all of our presentations, we're just showing examples of the work that journalists are doing. None of these are endorsements of any specific journalism organization. So while a story may hold personal significance to you, it may not meet all the standards and criterias that journalists are looking for when it comes to newsworthiness. And we'll get into what makes something newsworthy in a newsroom in a second. So some of these things look like the time element. How timely is this story? Is this a breaking news event? Right? The more timely it is, the more likely it's going to get covered. If something is from a week ago or a month ago, chances are, if it wasn't covered then, it's not going to get covered now. How prominent, right? How important is this story to the audience, right? To the communities or the people involved that are affected by this issue? And then how, the human element, the human interest part of it is how interesting is the story, right? Are there emotional components to it? Is there some shocking element to it? Is there some feeling of triumph to it, right? Is there something really compelling about this? And then something, a lot of things that make news are also things that are unique. How different is this news from things that we typically hear? How out of the ordinary, how extraordinary is this thing? So now that we understand what news is, we have to be careful because there's a lot of information out there that has the appearance of news, but it serves other purposes. So our next key term, opinion, right? This is information that persuades you through fact-based evidence to adopt a specific point of view. And oftentimes this is referred to as commentary in journalism or opinion journalism. A big problem with a big problem with people's ability to distinguish news from opinion is that a lot of times it can be covered, the same topic that's covered in news is often covered in opinion. Um, and it can often look the same. So these postings by the Washington Post, the one on the left is a straight news piece. It's telling you about four minority head coaches who have filled head coaching vacancies in the NFL. The post on the right is talking about the same thing, right? And if you look at them on their face value, you would probably think that both of these are news articles. But there are a couple of things to pay attention to. A big important thing when it comes to discerning news from opinion is paying attention to the word choice. The article on the left is giving you literally what happened, who's involved, why is this happening, right? The NFL has literally said it's one of their goals to increase diversity within its coaching staffs. So this is literally just telling you the news about what happened. The post on the right, one of the things you could use to tell that this is an opinion piece is the word perspective, right? Perspective, among many other journalistic jargon, is one word to indicate this is written by someone's opinion, right? This is written by someone with an opinion. They're sharing their opinion about a story, they're sharing their opinion about an issue. And in journalistic terms, they're shedding more context on what's actually happening, right? Not everyone knows about the NFL's the ins and out of the NFL's coaching hiring system and the improvements that they want to make. So journalists often add more context through opinion writing. But the other issue with discerning these key differences is that it's not always easy to discern which is which because of the language, right? Without clear indication that this is opinion writing or this is new straight news, right, where you will see these things literally on the same page. If you open up your local or national news organization, they'll post a lot of their many organizations will post a lot of their opinion writing next to their hard news writing. So how do you tell the difference? Well, the key is in the language. Both of these articles, one written by NBC News, the other by The Root, are both about the Grammy speech that rapper Jay-Z had last night talking about his wife's Album of the Year snub. The article on the left is literally telling you, through its headline that this is what Jay-Z said. This is what this rapper said about, his wife being snubbed. This is what he's saying. The article on the right, however, is giving you more suggestive language, right? It's trying to create a picture, it's giving you context. So his shady Grammy acceptance speech just proved that this is the most radical truth teller, that 2024 is the year of radical truth tellers, right? This is someone using their own opinion to give context to what's happening here. But you can't really tell, right? So a good way to indicate that something is opinion is to go back to the last example, is using things like perspective, right? It would be better to clearly say this is opinion, right? Opinion writing. That's the best way to do it. But oftentimes you'll see journalism organizations use words like perspectives or views or voices to indicate that this is someone's opinion. Standards-based news organizations publish news content and opinion content that is supported by evidence, logic, and reasoning. Credible, just like news articles, credible opinion pieces are based on verified facts and use sound, logical reasoning. And another important part of opinion journalism is that it doesn't seek to avoid bias and is not ignoring opposing views. In fact, good opinion journalism actually invites others to challenge views. So again, this can't be understated. Good opinion journalism should be labeled correctly, right? And labeled clearly so that it can avoid confusion with news. Here's an example of CNN Business. Their opinion piece literally says opinion, right? Literally says it. And in the byline, before the author's name, it doesn't say story or article written. It says opinion written by. Great distinction. Very good example. And alongside with opinion content, like columns, you'll also see things like editorials. And this editorials reflect the opinion of the editorial board. These are the editorial board is the newsroom leaders. They explain complex issues and explain influence public opinion on very important issues like politics or healthcare. Like news articles and news and straight news reporting, opinion journalism has a clear thesis that's supported by evidence and sound logic. And again, it doesn't refute opposing viewpoints. It encourages the discussion. It encourages opposing viewpoints to the discussion. What you also might see if you're paying attention to opinion journalism are what people refer to as talking heads, right? And this is the commentary that reflects the views of an individual, but they often have a team of researchers and editors and producers working with them to verify things. And they're also backed up by if even if you don't agree with their argument, they're based on sound logic, right? They have some argument and it's based on research. And in these cases, right, these talking heads, sometimes their views might actually be in opposition of the entire editorial board, right? People who have the platforms to be a talking head on one of these shows, they are a brand of themselves, right? So they get the platform, but what they're saying isn't always representative of the editorial board of a place. And as we're talking about talking heads, it's also important to mention infotainment. TV shows like The Daily Show or The Tonight Show is more entertainment than actual news. At NLP, we call it infotainment. While they focus on current events and can inform us of things that are going on and give us context, these sources are primarily trying to entertain us, right? It's to entertain you more than inform you. They often incorporate opinion and satire content, and use comedy as a way to entertain. So the impetus is more on the entertainment part than it is on the informing you, meaning getting it right, having the information correct and sources verified. It's more about entertaining you. And as we're on that subject of being careful of how you discern news from other sources of information, be careful of sources that are seeking to manipulate you rather than inform you. So when we think about the differences between opinion and propaganda, opinion is trying to persuade you through a fact-based argument to adapt a view. Propaganda promotes a single view as being the only view and ignores other voices. Good quality opinion can be evaluated based on its argument, and it also acknowledges other viewpoints. Propaganda just relies on your emotional response to something and limited critical thinking skills. So another key term, propaganda. It's information that provokes you by using false or distorted information to manipulate you. So some of the common propaganda techniques brought to you by the museum are things like simplification, taking really complex issues, say the outbreak of COVID-19 or or any other major conspiracy, right? And making it seem like there's this shadow organization or there's something going, some collusion happening between countries. It's taking a really complicated thing and just slapping a really simple explanation for it. And then as we get more into election season, you'll start to see more use of division, more divisive propaganda techniques, right? And which are attempts to broaden the wedge between us and to make more of a gap between them and us, right? To drive us apart. And so hopefully no one has seen this. If you have, hopefully if you do read national news, you're not going to read it anymore. If you haven't seen a propaganda website because you might not be involved in, filter bubbles or, these echo chambers, here is a piece of propaganda content that has the look and feel of a news article. This natural news website page looks like how any other news organization works, right? It has a podcast, even, and interviews and audiobooks, and you can subscribe and follow, right? But if you look, all of these headlines are sensational and emotive and accusatory. So outside of propaganda, now that we know what propaganda is, and it's trying to manipulate us emotionally, right? It's trying to use our emotions to manipulate us into an action. Advertisements are comment on news and information sites, but they shouldn't be confused with news coverage. So, branded content is media content that allows brands to tell their stories and highlight their values. It's used to build brand awareness and to reach bigger audiences. You can think of branded content as being less invasive and more engaging than traditional ads. So, in these examples, the morning show on Apple TV streaming service, this is a great example of what branded content looks like in a digital age. As a streaming platform, it created a show where it is able to market Apple products right there in the show, right? It's a popular show, it has big actors, so they're able to market things that Apple sells. It's brilliant, right? Another example of really good branded content is Red Bull's active sports scene. They collaborate with sports athletes around the world, snowboarders to MMX bikers to ice skaters to skiers. They collaborate with them to put on these really cool videos showcasing their skills, and it's highly produced and it's really cool, but it shows a lot of the Red Bull branding. And then the last example, which is more of a news example of branded content, is this really cool explainer series presented by Fox and Zelle that explain the ins and outs of scams that you see online, right? And Zelle, if you don't know, is a money transaction app, right? You can send money to different people. And Vox is a news organization. So Zelle bought an ad that would look like a news article, an explainer, and it sat on Vox's website, and they explained just the science of something that people really care about. So with branded content, you want to be careful of things like sponsored content also. And this might take the form of a morning newscast, right? And they bring someone in to talk about something. And it has the same feel as like an interview, like they're just interviewing someone. But by the end of the interview, they show this person's information, right? So in this example of Tampa Bay's Morning Blend, they bring in a guy, he's talking about the real estate market and the trends to expect. And by the end of it, they show the advertisement that, to let you know that this guy is here, to promote himself, right? Because he, paid for the time. And then another thing to be aware of is native branding, right? And this is where this is a specific case of branded content where organizations will work with news organizations to create content that looks like a news post on the website, right? So if you look at this article that was posted in the Guardian, it has the look and feel of a really cool article, right? Like a long piece investigative story or really cool investigative story. But it's really a paid promotion from Novavax, which is a biotech company in Maryland that develops vaccines. And this article goes through the history of diseases and vaccines. Um, and you'll see native branding all around you, right? If you just open up, a search engine or Yahoo or Google, you'll see things like this, right? You'll see the carousel of different news articles, but then if you pay close attention, you'll see ad by Fisher Investments or this place or McDonald's or AT&T. If you're careful, you can pay attention that native branding is actually all around you, and it's made to have the look of journalism of a news article, but it's not. It's an ad. So with all that saying, as we wrap up, I want to let you all know that quality journalism does exist, right? It's understandable to be skeptical about all sources of information because of today's complicated and nuanced information landscape. But credible standards based journalism does exist. There are hardworking professionals around the world working to inform people with accurate and reliable news. But it's on us to take this up, to take this challenge on ourselves. We have to be more responsible when it comes to our news consumption. First, we have to diversify our sources, right? You can't just listen and consume things that agree with your worldviews. You have to challenge yourself and consume as much as you can to gain a greater grasp on certain issues. It's also good to use, you can cross-check your information by comparing it to various sources of information. And it's important to have conversations about the underlying motives or the biases or the potential biases of a news organization or a media outlet. And it's also important to support good quality journalism. Subscribe to local newspapers, subscribe to things that you consume that are newsworthy, right? Subscribe to the credible news sources that you trust. It is important that you lean into and be an advocate for quality journalism. And as always, verify before you amplify. Before you share something, verify it, right? Read things, read other reports about it, cross-check it with other reporting to see if it's verifiable. And in order to help you with that fight, we have created Rumor Guard to help people fact check against the latest viral memes and claims online. If you want to learn how to debunk viral rumors and misinformation for yourself, you can join Rumor Guard at rumorguard.org/join, where we dig deeper into some of the news literacy skills that we use to debunk news literacy and fact checking skills that we use to debunk viral memes online. So at this point, I'll stop. I know we're a little bit over time. We're about a couple minutes over time, but I'll stop now to answer any questions. I'll start with what's in the chat, but feel free to add anything if you have questions. Yes, thank you, Ali, with the great reminder. Drop them in the Q&A feature if you have a question, please. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm not going to take any more of your time. We're a little bit over, so I thank you all so much for attending. I just saw a question that just came in, a good one, that asked, what newspaper would I recommend? The point of today's session, and I think the overall theme of what we're trying to accomplish with news literacy, is that we want everyone to be able to distinguish what sources do they deem would be the best for them, right? We want to equip you with the skills and the resources so that you can make those determinations for yourself. We don't endorse any particular newspaper or news organization. But what I would suggest is checking the standards and the editorial ethics of a particular place and see if they align with what your values are. If they do, then it's likely something you can trust. Great. Also, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. Please join us at the end of the month. Sorry, get to the next slide. For Boost Your News IQ, Are You Informed or Are You Being Influenced? On February 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Again, all of these public trainings are free. Thank you so much for attending. All the resources and a copy of this recording will be sent out to you later via email. I'm Demario Phipps Smith. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon, everyone.